Welcome everyone to AURI Connect's Webinar Wednesday, part of AURI Connect's monthly online series featuring updates on the work that AURI is doing to foster long-term economic benefit for Minnesota through value-added agricultural products. I'm Dan Scogan, the AURI Director of Government and Industry Relations, and your host for Webinar Wednesdays. The AURI Connects program is hosted by the Agricultural Utilization Research Institute in Minnesota. This program aims to actively engage all participants in the food and ag industry to improve competitiveness of producers, businesses, and entrepreneurs through ongoing purposeful connection of resources and partners along the value chain, and increase knowledge of opportunities, technologies, and trends. Remember, this event is being recorded and archived. It can be found at auri.org. Remember, too, that you will be muted during our presentations, but you can send us your written questions through the Q&A portal on your screen. Today, we have brought together a panel to discuss the value of AURI's partnership with USDA's Rural Cooperative Development Grant Program, what the program is, and how it may help you as a new business entity to utilize cooperative development to positively impact rural economies. On today's panel, we will welcome Lisa Sharp. Lisa is a business, loan, and grant analyst for the Program Management Division within USDA Rural Development's Rural Business Cooperative Service. Previously, Lisa served as the Director of Rural Business Cooperative Service Programs, Rural Development Coordinator, and Public Information Officer for USDA Rural Development in West Virginia. Also here today is Kevin Edberg, the Executive Director of Cooperative Development Services Incorporated. We'll also hear from Michael Sparby, Director of Commercialization for AURI. Now, in that role, Michael is responsible for project development, assists in program delivery, and securing grant funds. In addition, he oversees AURI's stakeholder analysis process and is responsible for AURI's Cooperative Development Center through USDA's RCDG program. Also here today, Carmen Fernholz. Carmen and his wife, Sally, operate a 400-acre diversified organic crops farm near Madison, Minnesota. Over the past 10 years, he's been collaborating with the University of Minnesota in the development of a perennial intermediate wheatgrass trademarked as Kernza. Because this is a relatively new crop, market development is in the very early stages. Consequently, Carmen is working with a number of current Kernza growers at the University of Minnesota in the development of this market. The growers have formed a co-op called Perennial Promise Growers Cooperative to help facilitate new grower access to markets, as well as provide agronomic and post-harvest processing assistance. Financial assistance from AURI has been significant in making this co-op a reality. And we'll hear from Troy Stoffenecker. Troy is the General Manager for Northern Pride Incorporated. Troy grew up on his parents' turkey farm in northwestern Minnesota, and he started at Northern Pride 27 years ago, directly out of college as a procurement manager, and then worked through various roles with the company to his current position as general manager. Welcome, panelists, to today's discussion, and let's get started with Lisa Sharp. Lisa, welcome to Webinar Wednesday.
Good afternoon. Thank you, everyone, for allowing me to be part of the webinar today. It's my pleasure to talk with you about the Rural Cooperative Development Grant Program within USDA Rural Development's Rural Business and Cooperative Service. The primary objective of the program is to improve. You can advance to the next slide. Thank you. The primary objective of the program, of course, is to promote cooperative development in rural areas. Through the program itself, we aim to improve the economic condition of rural areas by assisting individuals and businesses in the startup, expansion, or operational improvement of cooperatives and other mutually owned businesses throughout cooperative development centers. And there are a variety of these across the country that we work with. Grants are awarded through a national competition. The applications are submitted to the state, and then they do compete at the national level. It is a very competitive application process. Each fiscal year, applications are requested through a notice which is published in the Federal Register and through an announcement posted on grants.gov. Advance to the next slide, please. Our typical annual allocation, although we do not have one yet this year since we're operating on a continuing resolution, We do expect that to remain constant, though, so we do typically receive about $5.8 million, which does seem like a good bit. But again, it is a very competitive process. So we try to fund as many applications as we possibly can through that. The typical application does come in at about $200,000, and that is the maximum grant amount that can be requested through the program. Eligible applicants for this program are nonprofit corporations, cooperatives, institutions of higher education, and public bodies. For-profit businesses and individuals are not eligible. That's important to note. So typically through this program, we do work with cooperative development centers to advance cooperative development, specifically in rural areas across the country. For this program specifically, matching funds are required, and we do require a 25% match of the total project cost. Advance to the next slide. Grant and matching funds can be used for operating rural cooperative development grant centers, or rural cooperative development centers, excuse me. Examples of the work that these centers do is really a wide variety of activities, including conducting feasibility studies, developing business plans. So they're working very closely in a hands-on position with small cooperatives. They provide leadership and operational improvement training, and they also facilitate strategic planning for small cooperatives. And it's important to note that the center can be located in any area, but the individuals and businesses that are assisted through the program must be located in an eligible rural area. And our staff can help determine eligibility for this particular program. Advance to the next slide, please. And Minnesota has a strong history of success with the Rural Cooperative Development Grant Program. Minnesota is one of the most active states, demonstrating a long history of cooperatives in the state and a lot of good work being done. Currently, there are 3 RCDG funded centers operating in Minnesota, including the Agriculture Utilization Research Institute, the Food Co-op Initiative, and North Country Cooperative Foundation. So there's a lot of great work being done across the state, and thanks to these great groups. So we look forward to continued relationships in the future with them, and I'll be glad to take questions at the end of the panel. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Lisa. And let's move to Kevin Edberg. Kevin?
Thank you very much, Dan. It's my pleasure to be here, and let's go to the next slide, please. So as Lisa was just saying, the program has about $5.8 million. That means at $200,000 for an average grant, about 30 recipients around the country. That means that not everyone in the United States has access to the services of a cooperative development center. We're trying to work with Congress to improve that. Each recipient has their own scope of work that they define in their application. They define what regions or geographies they work in and what skill sets that they bring to the work. Next slide, please. So as Lisa was just saying, we have 4 centers that are actually working in here. Cooperative Development Services is legally domiciled in Wisconsin. So while we have staff here, we file our applications in Wisconsin, but we're sponsored by the trade associations in the states of Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa. The other centers, folks like North Country Cooperative Foundation, are doing awesome work, very inspiring work in helping manufactured home parks owners convert to cooperative ownership as a means of preserving affordable housing. Their work is going on nationwide. North Country represents that work here in this region. It's incredibly inspiring. Food Co-op Initiative works nationwide in helping communities, urban and rural, to support startup of grocery stores. Their RCDG is used to support their rural work. In that organization, they have created over 150 new co-ops that actually started and opened business. Of them, 100 have lasted over 5 years, generating something in the order of 200,000 owner members, annual payroll of $45 to $50 million, and total annual sales of about 200 million. So very impactful work. I'll let Mike Sparby talk about AURI's work. Next slide, please. So these centers around the country have been working together for a long time to try and build our shared capacities. My organization was one of the founding members of an entity called Cooperation Works. We've been an organization for a little over 20 years. And our intention is to provide for collaboration across state lines, across centers, and leveraging capacities of the individual centers. Both AURI and CDS are members, and we have been doing that work together for several years now. Next slide, please. For my organization, some of the things that we excel in, we're a general purpose inquiry, so we don't specialize in any one sector. We try and serve multiple needs. We provide guidance on the co-op development pathway to equip startup leaders, steering committees, in seeing the pathway that's ahead of them. In some sectors, we do business planning. In most sectors, we are able to connect clients to regional resources, the unique assets and talents and abilities that are present inside the larger co-op community. We do a ton of work in cooperative capitalization. That includes grant writing. It includes the fiscal agency for accessing philanthropic capital. And our primary areas that we work in are local food systems, agriculture, grocery, and senior housing co-ops. Next slide, please. And as an example of some of the work that we do together, a project that I'm participating now with our colleagues in North Dakota and South Dakota is an expediter co-op. Basically, we're trying to tackle the issue of how do we get affordable wholesale groceries to rural grocery stores to allow those stores to remain viable in their communities and as a service to the residents. We are also have participated with AURI in some pre-feasibility assessment for various meat processing capacities, both cooperative and non-cooperative. I have been asked to sit on AURI's protein processing group that just began meeting this past year in response to the national issues around meat processing. I think that was the last slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. My name is Michael Sparby, Commercialization Director with AURI. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about AURI's Cooperative Development Center. Obviously, been supported through USDA's Cooperative Development Grant Program, or RCDG. Our center was created in 2010 and has completed 8 successful awards over the past 11 years. And what we do with our center is we maintain what our mission is, which is value-added agriculture focus. So that's the lens that we use when we're operating our center. And we provide business and technical assistance to co-ops and mutually owned rural businesses throughout Minnesota and the region. Next slide, Ray. So since 2010, our center has supported 132 projects with 107 rural businesses and co-ops. So the numbers don't match up because there are some co-ops will have a multitude or a number of different scope projects over that 10-year time frame. And those projects represent 14,291 member owners. And we have created 4 new co-ops and 17 new rural businesses through our center. And when we look at the outcomes, that's not anything that we do alone. We work within a vast collaborative network, which Kevin alluded to. And that network includes cooperative development centers throughout the U.S., local banks, Compeer, CoBank, initiative foundations, community and regional economic development organizations, the University of Minnesota, the Minnesota State College System, MDA, DEED, small business development centers, industry ecosystems, soil and water conservation districts, commodity groups, and that's just to name a few. So we don't do this alone, but the client reported outcomes as a result of the assistance from the USDA RCDG program have reported 173 new jobs created, 171 existing jobs retained, 139 million in new capital investment, and 217 million in increased annual revenue. So I won't go on. I actually want to get it into the hands of a couple of co-ops that have benefited from the program. So I'm going to turn it over to Carmen.
Okay, thank you, Michael, for that introduction. And as was mentioned in my brief bio at the beginning, I've been involved with a new crop being developed by the University of Minnesota called intermediate wheatgrass with the copyright name of Kernza, or the trademark name. And just so you know what you're looking at on these slides, these are pictures of this new crop that was started to be developed in 2010 at the University of Minnesota. And in 2011, the university asked me to help them develop this crop, and they gave me some seed to start growing it so that we could do some research plots right on our farm here in Madison, Minnesota. And so for the next 7 to 8 years, we worked with those plots in conjunction with the university. And in 2018, the university released its own variety of this Kernza. But what we started seeing, especially those of us who are starting to grow interest in it as farmers, is that it's nice to have a new crop, but how can we find a market for this crop? Because obviously it's so new. How are we going to use it? Who's going to be interested in it? How does it need to be grown? And so I started visiting with several people at the university, but also several other farmers began to ask questions to me and to people at the university about the possibilities of growing it themselves. And so almost the immediate thing that came to mind for me is, if we're going to really develop this crop, I think we need to put together some kind of a co-op to help the producers not only grow the crop, but then to find the markets for them. And so about 2 years ago, 7 or 8 of us got together and formed a steering committee and actually put together a co-op called Perennial Promise Producers Co-op. And we are still in the steering committee mode, but we have registered articles of incorporation with the University of Minnesota. And we are currently developing and near completion of our bylaws and membership agreements. But what has really been helpful to me as an individual farmer here is being able to connect both with Michael Sparby and Kevin Edberg, because we spent a good amount of time working with Kevin in going through our bylaws and trying to define what it is we wanted to accomplish with this co-op, and what kind of dollars it's going to need, or we're going to need to make a co-op successful. So working with Kevin's group has been very successful, and our near-term work with Kevin is going to be connecting with us as well when we try to look at some of the additional grants that we think we should be eligible for. And then the other piece that really has been beneficial to us is working with Michael, who helped us get several grants to do what we really wanted to do, and that was a really solid feasibility study on market interest. And that feasibility study was just completed, and it has given our co-op tremendous insight into the possibilities and the potential in the future for this grain. And just one other final comment there we're looking at this co-op as also being a marketing tool for the future crops that are involved in the Forever Green initiative at the university. So once we can develop the currents and get that market going, and the university starts putting out these other Forever Green crops, we hope that we can work hand in glove with the university in marketing those crops as well. But we also realize that we're going to need a lot of assistance in financing and development of this co-op. And so our work with AURI and with Cooperative Development Services has been critical in us moving this co-op forward. So we as a steering committee really have and do appreciate the work that these two organizations have been doing and continue to do with us. And so with that, I will turn it over to the next speaker, which is Troy.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to share Northern Pride's story. Northern Pride was established in 1989 when Northern Pride purchased the existing facility from Land O'Lakes, who had previously owned it. And in 1989, Land O'Lakes exited the turkey business, forcing the growers to not have a home for their turkeys. So a decision was made by the growers to purchase the plant and market the turkeys under the Northern Pride brand, as well as co-packing for major retailers across the country. Northern Pride, being one of the smaller turkey companies in the country, has succeeded by focusing on niche markets to differentiate ourselves from the rest of the industry. Some of the niche markets we're focused on are free range, raised without antibiotics, an individual gift box, and most recently we've been growing a lot of organic, and that continues to grow each year as well. This just shows some of the major customers we work with, major retailers across the country, Safeway, Albertsons, and then we work with a lot of smaller retailers across the country, but as well as some major ones such as Whole Foods and Trader Joe's. Our growers, currently we're made up of 22 growers across the state of Minnesota. We have 3 in North Dakota, as well as 5 up in the southern Manitoba region. Annually, we produce about 3 million head of turkeys. Most of those are hen sex. We're raising them from anywhere from 15 to 25 pounds typically. On an average day, we'll process about 17,000 turkeys, and currently we employ about 200 people. And we are a seasonal operation on the harvesting side, because we do focus, our main focus in the past has been on the whole bird, and which is your Thanksgiving turkey, and so it's very seasonal. We are expanding. In the past few years, we've increased our production from 37 million pounds in 2019 to 45,773,000 pounds in this past year. And we predict to continue expanding and growing each year as well. Some of the products we produce, whole birds, like I mentioned, is our main focus. So we're producing the whole bird turkey. We'll do a bone-in breast, and we also do what we call a split breast, is taking the bone-in breast and splitting it in half for a smaller portion. We also do bulk pack parts and boneless meats through deboning. We've recently introduced what we call a turkey chop. Appears similar to a pork chop, but it's actually a turkey bone-in turkey chop. And then we do a gift box for companies across the country to hand out their employees at the holiday season as well. And most recently, we purchased a building adjacent to our main facility in December of 2020. It's a 19,000 square foot facility that we went in and renovated, and we're doing it in phases. First phase was completed in August of 2021, and second phase is going to be completed here in the next month of April. This is some outside views of the building after some facelift to the outside of the building, as well as the interior. We had to do a complete demo of the building from floor to ceiling. We had to install new drains in the floor, so pretty much all the concrete had to be torn out and redone. And this is what the new facility looks like in one of the rooms. So we've went in and created stainless steel panels on the walls, LED lighting. So it's state-of-the-art facility now. And some of the other areas that we've completed is the welfare area. We have a production room A for tray packaging, production B room for deboning, and then we have a raw materials cooler as well. With the expansion into the new building, that's allowed us to expand into new markets and new opportunities. One of the primary areas is deboning of the turkeys. We're currently deboning turkeys over there and creating parts that are sold back to further processors to make into other items. It's also allowing us to expand into a tray pack line, smaller portions, packaging of drums, wings, bone-in thighs, split breasts, necks, and chops. The Rural Co-op Development Grant, we received a grant in the fall of 2021 towards a new facility. It helped us in funding of our project and gave us an additional incentive to move forward and expand. With the expansion, we've created 35 full-time jobs, or will have created 35 full-time jobs by April. And we continue to look for new opportunities to expand in the new facility and continue adding employment as well as we grow. AURI has been very helpful in providing assistance for the grant writing and also helping us secure the rural development grants as well as other grants in the past 5 years. So we appreciate their help and all the assistance they've been giving us over the years as well. With that, concludes Northern Pride story. So I'll turn it back to Dan.
All right, Troy, thank you. And thank you all you panelists for sharing your story kind of from a high view. If our listeners and participants today want to dig in a little deeper and have specific questions on how the RCDG grant works, how they can apply for it, how competitive it is, certainly start to put your questions in the Q&A portal. And we're going to ask a few questions ourselves. And I'm going to start with Lisa and Kevin. And either one of you can take this, but I think what struck me right almost immediately, and this is coming from an old farm boy who grew up around co-ops. We had a co-op that brought electricity into our farmyard, and we had co-ops that we bought our fertilizer from and sold our grain to. But it's really beyond, cooperatives are really beyond food and ag. And it looks like this RCDG program is developed to go beyond food and ag. Is that a fair statement, Kevin or Lisa?
It is. That is a fair statement. And I think Kevin gave a great example. And I have been working with the program for the last 2 years primarily. So it's been a great introduction to me because that was my perspective on co-ops as well. Coming from West Virginia, we didn't have a lot of co-ops in West Virginia. So, and legislation was passed in recent years to really promote and begin to move in that direction. But as Kevin mentioned, and one of the most interesting that I found or surprising was the one that's working with housing. And I thought that was really interesting. So there are just a really wide variety across the country that are doing a lot of different work. So it's the door is really wide open. Kevin might be able to speak to more specific examples.
All right. Well, thank you, Lisa. I completely agree. The cooperative model is just a plain incredible model. I've been blessed to be able to work in this environment for over 20 years. And I love the work. I love the people that I get to work with. So we in the Upper Midwest have a long history and tradition of agricultural cooperatives. Land O'Lakes, CHS are both, that's the first and third largest cooperatives in the United States, both headquartered in Minnesota. We have 8 of the top 100 largest co-ops in the US are headquartered in Minnesota. So including Health Partners, which is primarily in healthcare. But we're also seeing work in cooperative, worker-owned cooperatives as succession strategies to retiring owners of businesses. In some cases, they're startups. We're seeing it, as we mentioned, not just in housing, but in home care. So folks that are using that model to come into the homes of folks who need additional assistance in just daily chores. It's an incredibly ubiquitous model. And so the value, I think, that co-op development centers bring to this work is number one, knowing the basics of the model and helping people see the details of what's necessary to adapt it to their particular business or market or geography, whatever that might be, and then connect them into a larger network of cooperative support. The co-op business model is the only business model in the world that has an internationally agreed upon set of values and principles. And one of those principles, number 6, is cooperation among cooperatives. So this sense that we are all better when we are all working together. And so that's just been a great theme. And both AURI, CDS, others, all have talented folks that can help people in this region adapt this idea to whatever their particular need might be.
Well said, Kevin. Michael Sparby, a question from one of our participants today. How is AURI doing in exchanging knowledge between majority and diversity minority farmers? You're on mute yet. There you go.
I'm on mute.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, with the program, we worked with the Red Lake Nation as well as the Lower Sioux and other Indian or Native American bands throughout the state and the region. And a lot of that has been business development as well as feasibility assessment.
Excellent. We got one here that says, just a thankful shout out for CDS and Kevin Edberg's group for their help in our launching of the Midwest Elderberry Cooperative in 2012. Still growing strong, probably would not have happened without them. Kevin, any comment to that comment?
Well, I'll just say thank you to the author, Chris. It's been a delight. Certainly there's a theme that cooperatives have been used historically to create markets. That it's not just finding markets, sometimes it starts there, but the whole sense that when people take ownership, just as what Troy was describing in looking for niches, finding places as a smaller entity that they need to find unique places because they generally, our smaller co-ops aren't immediately competitive with the larger, more mainstream kinds of models. So being really good at a smaller number of things is a consistent theme. So with elderberries, and there are other examples where growers get together, bring their harness their energies and their talents and their volume to try and to make a market. I think that's one of those themes that incorporates entrepreneurship into this cooperative concept. We think of co-ops as old organizations, some of them are, but there's a vibrancy and an entrepreneurship that comes, and it's not unlike entrepreneurship of individual businesses, individual owners. But what takes co-ops a time to get started is that it takes people to come together and get their minds aligned. And that takes time when you're working with a group of people as opposed to a solo entrepreneur who maybe has to convince his spouse that, honey, I just mortgaged the house. We're going to build our business in the garage.
And this is a good idea.
Yeah. So anyway, it takes longer to form, but these tend to be very long-lasting organizations when they experience success.
Carmen, I wanted to come back to you because you mentioned the Forever Green initiative that's coming through the University of Minnesota system, and how you hope to participate in creating markets or finding markets for some of those oilseed crops that we're going to see with the Forever Green. Do you kind of have a roadmap already in place? Are you thinking about strategically how that might work, or what help might you need yet to bring that to fruition?
Yeah, I appreciate that. First of all, I would just piggyback on the Elderberry co-op. I'm hoping that within a year or year and a half, we can say the same thing about the Perennial Promise Growers Cooperative. A shout out to Kevin and Michael for getting us down the road. But when we look at these crops in the Forever Green Initiative, they're really crops that are thinking outside the box. If we look at them, I mean, Kernza being a perennial wheat, you plant it one year and it comes back each year, so you don't have to plant it. So it's a whole new concept in the minds of the growers. And then it looks like a wheat, but it has to be utilized a little bit differently. It certainly is not a substitute for wheat. So getting the end users, the buyers, to want to get into it is going to be the challenge as well. And as I mentioned earlier, we've got this just completed market feasibility study now to fall back on. And the co-op was successful in securing a marketer about 3 or 4 months ago, who is currently knocking on the doors of some of the big players in the food markets. And his communication with them is also bringing back information to us as a co-op. And so what we're going to need, of course, in the near term, for sure, is some heavier financing, because we're going to need some kind of co-op manager, if that's what you want to call it, or an executive director. And so that's where we're going to be really leaning on people like Michael and Kevin to help us navigate some of those potential financial sources that we can work with. But at the same time, the co-op is really set up to have a very direct collaborative relationship with the University of Minnesota. And just to explain that a little bit, there is definitely the plans to release a new and better variety of this Kernza in either 2023 or 2024. And it is the hopes of our co-op that we can get some kind of an exclusive licensing agreement with the university, much like the grass growers up in Roseau have done over the years. And so how we develop these markets is going to be dependent upon us. But if we know that we've got the interest and the collaborative efforts of the university, I know we can move forward on that. It's sort of a waiting game at this point, however. Do the buyers really come to us and want these new products? When we talk about not only Kernza, we're talking about perennial flax. We're talking about a developed perennial sunflower. We're talking about a winter camelina, a winter pennycress. So we're really looking at a lot of items on the menu. But I think being connected with AURI and the cooperative development people, as these new products come on, we can look to them to help us develop those markets as well. So I'm optimistic about it, and I think we can take it someplace.
Troy, there's a question about the forecast on the possibility for growth in the organic turkey market up at your Thief River Falls plant and what that might mean for the co-op up there.
So we've been seeing a steady growth in the organic market. We've been in the organic market probably the last 5 years, and we've been growing it probably by 10 to 20% every year. We're seeing it, you're seeing organic obviously in the upper scale retail stores, Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, but now we're also seeing from the turkey side, some of the other major retailers also bringing in organic turkeys into their stores. So we are seeing expansion across the board. It is kind of a challenge right now. We're being faced with some commodity challenges. Organic soybean meal is very tight this year. So prices are nearly double of what they were this past from last year. So it's creating some production challenges, but we're hopeful we can secure enough product and continue to keep raising turkeys as the consumers keep demanding them.
And I'm just going to ask you, are you interested in expanding your growers? I think you said you had 22, 23 up there in northwestern Minnesota, the Dakotas, and parts of Canada. Are you looking to add more?
Yeah, we are looking as we're growing. We're needing to add some new growers. A lot of our growers are second and starting to be third generation. So we've had some growers retire that maybe didn't have a legacy plan in place. Yeah, as the coming years come, we'll have definitely needs to expand outside of our existing group.
Kevin, we have a question about board training, and they would like you to elaborate a little bit about your services on training a co-op board.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. So I think of governance as the Achilles heel of cooperative enterprise. That I mentioned a moment ago, the challenge of helping people align themselves around a business concept and their roles in the cooperative on an ongoing basis at startup. But then almost immediately, as soon as you move into that sense of operation, there are unique roles of how does a board govern the organization? How do they think about the future, the strategy? How do they interact with their general manager in productive and useful ways? It's not as straightforward and not as simple. And frankly, in America, we don't think about governance. We think about politics really good, really lots. We don't think about governance. And so this whole aspect for cooperatives is really critical. CDS started in 1991, started growing a group of governance consultants in the food co-op sector. We spun them out as their own consulting cooperative in 2008. Today, that group represents about over a dozen, 12, 15 individual consultants working nationwide, mostly in the grocery co-op sector, in the nonprofit sector, and are expanding into other sectors as well. So we have stimulated that and supported that. One of my current projects is how do we bring those services to smaller co-ops that may have fewer resources for affording those talents. And then in addition to that, we've been the fiscal sponsor on a project supporting some university professors in creating virtual modules. Basically, the growers would, or the co-op would purchase a license to use and have access to modules that would be allowed to be viewed by their board members individually or collectively. And that's just rolling out this year. So those are a couple of the approaches. There are some other one-off kinds of things that we can do and sponsor, but I just want to hold up it across the entire cooperative sector. Governance is critical. We really need to pay attention to that. And for any of the cooperators or would-be cooperators out there, don't let that one slip off your radar screen.
Very good. I want to go back to Lisa for just a bit and just have her comment on other programs within their agency that might tie into what's happening with RCDG.
Thanks, Dan. I would be remiss if I didn't mention this, and the good work that's happening throughout these cooperative development centers has really lent itself to some real great opportunities for cooperatives and small businesses across the country. And I wanted to mention just some programs that we have that are available. And again, it's to a little bit different application group, but our eligible entity group. But for instance, the Value Added Producers Grant, the Rural Energy for America program, our B&I Loan Guarantee Program. And we also have a variety of organizations that we work with across the country that are intermediary relending programs. So those are kind of niches where maybe an entity is not ready for, is maybe not yet bankable, but is looking for funding for expansion opportunities or different things like that. So specifically Troy and Carmen, the folks that you're working with and the work that you're doing, wanted to mention that those programs are available through our agency. And if you don't have a relationship with the USDA Rural Development yet, I would suggest that, you're more than welcome to contact me, and I'll put you in touch with folks in your state, or you can just Google USDA Rural Development in your state and look for the Business Development Program staff, and they'll be happy to have a conversation with you about programs and the work that you're doing and where your interests are, and hopefully make a connection for you.
Very
and
good,
again, it's
Lisa.
a variety of loan, grant, and loan guarantee programs.
Very good information. Appreciate that. Michael Sparby, if scale matters for some of these startups and entrepreneurs, is forming co-ops one way to achieve some of that scale? I'm thinking like the hemp industry, aquaculture, aquaponics. Are there some opportunities to create some co-ops here that are going to maybe help some of these entrepreneurs succeed?
Absolutely. I think you're seeing a prime example with Carmen and with Troy, where a co-op came in after industry left the region and was able to come together, purchase the assets and the processing, and continue to grow that asset and grow that industry. And in Carmen's case, being able to pull producers together to create that industry. And we've seen it time and time again throughout the state with the grass seed growers up in northwestern Minnesota, and numerous examples within the ethanol industry where producers come together and share that risk and are able to create industries and grow them.
I got a comment here from a listener today, the Elderberry guy. As mentioned a few times, the work done by AURI for one is passed on to others. Midwest Elderberry Co-op is now working with the Omaha tribe out of Nebraska to grow and thermally dry elderberries, utilizing the AURI project on thermally drying elderberries. It was completed with MEC a couple of years ago. So might go back to the diversity question we had as well, where we share that knowledge publicly as we collect it, and others are now taking advantage of it too. Here's a question to everyone. They say, do you see a need for more industry financial benchmarking and enhanced market exploration data for your industry to grow? So I guess that would be the two industries that we have on the program. Troy or Carmen, do you see a need for more industry financial benchmarking and enhanced market exploration for your industries to grow? Troy, maybe we'll start with you.
Yeah, I would say there's definitely a need for more market exploration. We're always searching for new opportunities within the market and trying to, I guess, promote our healthy product we have. And it's probably one of the cheapest proteins out there, so we want to get it out there and make it available to everybody. Oftentimes we're hearing that people are looking for products, but it's not available. So that's one of our challenges is getting it into all the stores across the country. So when people are looking for a specific item, they have the ability to go out and purchase it.
Carmen, anything to add to that?
Yeah, just a little bit. I'd probably take, with what I'm working with, we'll probably take a little bit of a different angle, and that is that we're looking at soil health and we're looking at water quality these days. And with this crop of Kernza, it's a whole new concept of agriculture, which we're calling perennialization, keeping some living cover on the land more days out of each year. And so where I think we really need some market and industry help and research is, can we really collect the actual data that shows improvements on water quality and soil health by utilizing some of these crops? In other words, can we put a dollar and cents value on the ecosystem services that these specific crops eventually will generate, not only the Kernza but the other perennial crops and the winter annual crops. So that's where I would really love to see some additional help from industry and markets on showing to the consumer the benefits of them buying these food products, because they are also then helping with the ecosystem services.
Troy, I want to come back
Yeah.
to you. Go ahead. Go ahead, Kevin.
I'd like to add another perspective on that. Access to capital is absolutely critical for co-ops. And because the co-op model does not emphasize return on invested capital, the co-op model has a challenge capitalizing growth. The access to capital is often tied to what are your operational metrics. And in our established industries, bankers know exactly where to go to find out what are your key operating ratios and metrics, so that they can apply that information to an individual applicant for loans. That doesn't exist in the same way in many sectors. There is an entity called Cometrics that is applying that. It was pioneered 20-something years ago by Cooperative Development Services with grocery co-ops. It's been expanded to other sectors, including the conventional grain co-op world, where you take the financial data from a large number of operators, you anonymitize it so that folks don't know whose data is whom exactly, but you are able to then say, okay, here are your high performing quartiles of individual participants, and here are their key metrics, whatever that criteria happens to be. What we've seen that does is it allows other folks to say, oh, I want to know who's up in that top quartile, and I want to know what they are doing that lets them perform better than where we are. And that conversation stimulates discussion about, so what are good, better, or best practices in a particular sector or along a particular measure. And there is an entity, as I said, Cometrics is doing that in multiple sectors right now. And that kind of data for some of these niche markets for non-commodity agriculture is really a critical piece to take on. So again, another perspective on benchmarking.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Kevin. I'm going to go back to Troy and Michael Sparby, maybe on a two-headed answer to this one. And that's just the ease of the program. We might have listeners today who are interested in or been thinking about forming a co-op, or maybe I'll start with you, Troy. How easy was it to work through the process with AURI when you did your upgrades?
So yeah, the AURI has definitely made the process a lot easier and smoother for us. They assisted us in finding a grant writer to help with the program, and so definitely simplified the process. And they've also been able to help us, like I said, secure other grants and fundings as well throughout the years. So they've been definitely a good partner to have along the way.
And Michael Sparby, on your side of it, you're applying for the RCDG grants and then applying them out in the field. How simple a process is that?
From a USDA perspective or from a
Right.
client coming to us?
Either one, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah. And is that what you want? You want the client to come to you?
Yeah, ultimately, it's as simple as either sending an email or picking up the phone and contacting us, and we'll sit down and have the conversation and figure out whether or not the RCDG program is an appropriate fit, or if we assist through regular AURI or other programs that we have in place.
Starts with that first phone call, right?
Absolutely.
All right, I think we're going to leave it there today. I want to thank everyone who participated, our presenters and our panelists today, and that does conclude our AURI Connects Webinar Wednesday for today. AURI Connects Webinar Wednesday is presented by the Agricultural Utilization Research Institute of Minnesota. AURI's mission is to foster long-term economic benefit for Minnesota through value-added agricultural products and processes. We're interested in your feedback, so please respond when we send out our event evaluations. And remember, for more information on today's program or any of the work that AURI is involved in, you can go to auri.org. Now, here's a reminder that AURI's 4th Annual New Uses Forum is coming up March 23rd and 24th, both virtually or in person at the Earl Brown Heritage Center in Brooklyn Center. This year, we'll be exploring the intersection of sustainability, innovation, and investment in food and agriculture. We look forward to hearing from a number of panelists and opening day comments, including those from Minnesota Ag Commissioner Tom Peterson. You can go to auri.org to register and find an agenda for the New Uses Forum coming up March 23rd and 24th. We hope you can join us. Next month, the Agricultural Utilization Research Institute's, or AURI's, Ag Innovator of the Year Award has lauded innovative Minnesotans for more than a decade. Each year, AURI's Board of Directors bestows the honor to a client company or entrepreneur who is generating significant impact in the areas of product innovation, uniqueness, or commercialization potential. So next month, join AURI Connects Webinar Wednesday as we spotlight AURI's Ag Innovator of the Year. It's April 13th from noon till 1. To learn more about the award, its history, and headlining the event will be the announcement of our Ag Innovator of the Year, followed by a presentation, an interview, and a little Q&A with the winner. And you can always learn more about other work that AURI is involved with by going online to auri.org. We're looking forward to having you join us again April 13th for another AURI Connects Webinar Wednesday.